Hello out there.
We're on the air.
It's Rink Moose talk tonight. The beers are cold.
The mics light up.
And the boys get set to fight. The gloves come off.
Opinions get thrown.
And someone slips on ice. One man howls.
The other scowls.
But the show must go on. Oh, the good old hockey game is the best game you can name. And the best game you can name is the good old hockey game.
You're an announcer with a long stick from time to time.
With hockey flows
and more shots known.
Pierre McGuire's life, not John's a leaf.
Ovechkin's teeth
and Hoffman's crazy wife. When Carey slumps
and Bergevin stomps,
Duran's not LaFontaine. Jokes aside,
it's podcast time,
and Rink Moose is the name.
Oh, the good old hockey game is the best game you can.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to episode 28 of the Rink Moose Fantasy Hockey Podcast, a weekly episodic podcast where two good friends get together and discuss all things NHL and their implications in fantasy hockey.
Wow.
I am one of your hosts, Nic Petan, with this schmuck, the man they call Horny McGuire.
No.
Come.
No. You
Kyle,
didn't just bring that up. Well, Nick,
I had to. I mean, it's thematic. It fits. It fits where we are now in this season.
it does, and we'll jump into that. This is I haven't even thought much about it recently, actually. That whole scenario, because I've been away most of the weekend. But I think you can join me in saying that this is going to be a comparatively tougher episode compared to the last two, just because we're separated once again. We're not in the same studio, Rink Moose studio, as last time. So we're doing our usual thing. We're just, I'm in Toronto, Nick's in Kingston here. But boy, do we have a deep list of topics to cover today. We're going to give you everything Trade Center-wise after the Duchene deal. And it's going to be good. But firstly, Nick, the fantasy hockey playoffs are right around the corner. About
Tomorrow.
4 hours, in fact. And it looks like things have settled into place here. The dust has settled. And, man, I did not expect this week to go this way. Because I thought I was going to sail into a third-place spot with no hiccups. But it looks like I'm going to lose my way into a third-place spot with a couple hiccups here. Because I didn't expect this, but Fish, as in Bradshaw, has been just pummeled this week. So thank you to Mitch, and then you handled Braden just like I thought you would, and it looks like everything's going to settle into place. So I finished third, and I'm going to be facing the last place seed, who's actually a tough opponent, I've realized, and you're going to be second. Yes. So you get a nice easy bye week where you just sit back and plan for the future, and I'm going to be dropping key players to survive the present.
Beautiful.
It's not a great scenario, but I'm fired up. After this week, I'll either be on a high horse or I'll be depressed and very upset for 3 straight weeks.
It lasts 3 straight weeks. Is that right?
I think so. Like I'll have at least 2 weeks where I don't give a shit about like any of my favorite players or my favorite teams. I'll just be a casual fan for 2 weeks. And then I'll be like, okay, yeah, it's time to get back in the ring here.
Right.
So you'll have to carry me through those episodes.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, the tail of the tape's exciting. We got the Battle of the Kyles, and then we got the defending champ, Bradshaw, against Braden, who is the ultimate. I'm going all in. He's the Columbus Blue Jackets of.
Oh, shit. That's a good comparison, actually.
Oh, it's a great comparison, and it's a great tail of the tape.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that at the end of this coming week, one of the defending champ or Braden are going to be eliminated is kind of nuts.
You like that, eh?
I just it's crazy. It's like the playoff format. It's like saying one of Tampa or Toronto is getting knocked out. It's like these two dynasties, and one of them's gone.
It sounds like you're really fearful of Braden and his squad.
I am. I'm very fearful of that part of the bracket. Fortunately for me, I avoided it.
How does the bracket thing work, by the way? Is it?
So it's the first seed takes on the winner of 4v5, and the second seed takes on the winner of 3v6.
Second seed.
Yeah, because the whole point is like ideally second place plays third place, first place plays fourth place. So that's kind of how the bracket breaks down because they assume the higher seeds are going to win.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Interesting.
So, yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, I'll see you in the finals.
The semifinals.
Semis, exactly.
If you make it through.
If I do, yeah. No,
Which has
he's
never happened. We've never played each other in the playoffs, so that'll be very interesting.
I've never, like I said before, I've never won a round.
Never won, right? Yeah.
And this guy, he's a wild card because he's got guys like Kucherov and Pasternak's out right now, which is massive. But you should have seen the goaltending he put up this week. He's got like a 960 with 4 wins.
That's not good. That's not good. I mean, he's got Rask. Boston has what 16 games straight with a point. I think that's their record right now. And Wild have won 5 straight, and he's got Dubnyk.
It's bad.
And Hellebuck's now healthy again. So
yeah, he's got him too.
You got tall task.
Tall, but and it gets even worse if Pasternak comes back, which I don't know.
Think it's gonna happen. No, I don't think that's happening at all.
So that's a bullet dodged right there, right off the bat.
Yeah.
I can't really complain about anything.
No. And your goalies, I mean, rightfully so, strong as well. Price and Vasi.
Yeah.
So it's. I think it's going to come down to the goaltending here, as it always should and does.
Yeah. I gotta think his luck's gonna swing the other way for goalies. So I think he's gonna have more of an average week, just because he had you can't have godlike week 2 weeks in a row for goalies.
You could though, because that's how goalies work, right? They get hot, they get cold, and right now you're catching him on a hot streak.
Yeah, but we'll figure it out.
Think about it. Yeah.
I might have to pick up a phantom start here that is very unprecedented, but we'll see what happens.
Yes. All right. Well, we'll move on. We'll have the results for you guys next week in this epic week of the quarterfinal in our fantasy hockey league. But moving on, as promised, Kyle promised you guys we'd be giving this segment a test drive. You know, you walk to the dealership, get the keys, you want to test drive, right, Kyle?
Yeah, of course.
We've got just roars from the audience about the success of this segment. They love this segment, and we're going to give you a short little snippet this week. Of course, you all know I'm alluding to our Bachelor update.
All the emails have just been pouring in, Nick.
They've been pouring in. We should have a Q&A segment. We have questions.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the producer would let us do that.
No.
But, regardless, we had a hectic episode. You must have been sweating in this one.
Oh,
because I'll tell you. First things first. I'm very selective about what I watch. Like, time is of the essence in my life, as it is exactly. As it is. And
this makes the cut, eh?
Well, because of this fucking segment we have now.
Oh yeah, that's why.
I literally just tuned in for the little segments when he visits their home, the hometown.
You skipped everything else?
I skipped everything else.
You can't do that. Come on.
Yes, you can.
Are you not intrigued enough to watch the whole thing?
It's like literally an hour and a half.
No, it's an hour.
That's like a hockey game.
It's an hour.
Each episode's like an hour and a half.
No.
Yes. It's 2 hours with commercials, so it's like an hour and a half of like actual viewership. Baloney. Regardless. Because they want to appetize all the people, watching at home who have their fucking viewing parties and who love this shit. Diehards.
Yeah.
It's like Game of Thrones. It's like Game of Thrones for them. And so we had these hometowns, and the reason I think you were sweating during this episode, particularly come the end of the episode, is your gal, Cassie.
Oof.
She things were not looking good, were they?
No, Nick. I mean, as a Cassie fan, we're all just kind of sweating here because she can't get the words out. All these other women seem to be saying all the right things, and then Cassie's just kind of out there, not been able to really pony up the words. And then the worst part, Nick, was that in this episode we got a little taste of the teenager that reared its ugly head in this episode. There's a sleeping, immature little girl in there, and she came out, and it was pretty ugly. And I'm referring mostly to that that conversation she had with her dad, which was just like, oh, it was just cringy the whole time. Were you not getting that? Where that she was just like,
No, I
oh my god, I know, like just trust me, like, duh. It's like, oh my god, shut up.
23-year-old showing, right?
Exactly. Like that's the first time we've seen a flash of super immaturity, and it wasn't a good look. It simply wasn't a good look.
It was not a good look. I'm sure it surprised others just as much as it surprised us. And the bottom line is the dad was having none of it. You know,
No.
the guy, he got the consent to propose from all the fathers, you know, gave them a big hug. They seemed like, you know, like homies. And it was just awkward with her dad. Like they just left on an awkward note.
It's the only one he didn't get it from.
Yeah, and I was sure she was going home. I thought it was Dunzo, and like I said, you must have been sweating, but it didn't end up going that way. He sent the other gal home, her friend, and she lives to see another day.
I was shocked, Nick. I'm not gonna lie. They had me duped. They totally pulled a fast one on me because I was sure I was like, yeah, this is the end of the line. It all adds up. Logically, this is gonna happen, and then boom. Right there, wouldn't you know it, it's Kaylin who's going home. And we all just take a big exhale, and we live to see another week. And tomorrow's going to be amazing. Like, what an episode we have tomorrow. Fantasy Suites.
Oh, Fantasy Suites, and that preview left you in pretty
the fence jump. Suspense. Yeah.
The fence jump.
What we've all been waiting for all year is finally coming. The fence jump. And I think it's sure to please the fans. So that's gonna. This is like the playoffs of The Bachelor.
Right.
Like it's now down to the wire.
That's a good way to put it. That's a very good way to put it.
Fantasy playoffs coexist with Bachelor playoffs, and this is fantastic.
Right. Well, one last thing I'll say before we move on here, because it's gone on long enough.
Long enough. Yes.
I am kind of rooting for Tayshia here.
Get real here, Nick.
Listen, before I left home this past week, I spoke to my mom, who's been a long-time Bachelor fan since 2002 when the show started. She says, Nick, in the history of The Bachelor, there has not been one interracial couple.
Ooh.
Never happened. It's never happened.
Wow.
You've never had a black bachelor or a bachelor, white bachelor marry a black bachelor. It just hasn't happened.
But why do you think that makes this more likely to happen now?
Oh, I don't. I'm not predicting it. But if I'm hoping, like if I have a hope, if I'm wishful thinking here, I think it would be really something to have our first bachelor interracial couple.
So you are now again doing the Nick thing, chasing the storyline.
Chasing this, yes, the journalist in me is chasing the storyline. This would break barriers. We've already had it in The Bachelorette. We had a Bachelorette who was black. This would be really something if we could finish the cycle here.
Very interesting. Well, I don't fault you for that. I just I don't like her ever since she went on that rumor starting rant. So she can, but although I might say she's the most normal of the group. But we'll leave it at that. We'll let it simmer there, and we'll leave The Bachelor for next week. But it's going to be exciting, very exciting. But Nick,
what's coming up?
What do we have here, Nick? Well, let's do Guy Boucher first. Just quickly get this out of the way. So poor guy was fired. Actually, I call it more of a mercy fire. I think this is a long time coming, and I don't blame Guy Boucher one single bit for what's gone on here. I think it's more time. It was more just time to move on from this guy in the Ottawa Senators organization, and they got Mark Crawford as the interim here, and just ride out the season, and they're gonna look for their next guy. But I hope Guy Boucher lands on his feet because I think he's a really good coach, from what I can see. I don't know about his assistants there, like fucking. What's the guy's name that Duchene called out?
Raymond.
Marty Ramond. Yeah, maybe keep that guy in Ottawa for one more year, but I'm sure Guy Boucher will be fine because I'm a fan of his.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget this was the man who almost bought himself a home in Toronto, almost moved his family there. Thought he was getting hired.
The big controversy.
Until the big Babs. Rejected Buffalo and made his way over to Toronto.
and
Gave
put
him
a
the
guy
boot.
out of a job. He's like, yeah, sorry, man. I'm the king here. Jesus Christ, what an ass.
Yeah. So, hey, this guy's got a pedigree. He's been with successful organizations. He's made it deep into the playoffs with Tampa Bay and Ottawa. And I think he's going to be fine. I just think what's making headlines and why I brought this topic up, for why we should talk about it this week, is just the way it was handled. Right? Would you not agree?
How was it handled in a weird? I just heard that he was fired. I didn't really look into it too much.
Basically, like after the trade deadline, there was our boy Pierre Dorion kind of gave a State of the Union address.
Yeah.
And when they asked him about Guy Boucher, he said, "Hey, listen, the guy's our coach. We're going to support him. You know, we've got his back." There was this came out of nowhere on Friday morning when I woke up to this news, and it caught everyone else by surprise for that very reason. And now people are just throwing it into the long list of terrible things that have gone wrong with this organization and management and how they've handled their talent and now their coaching staff. They're calling it disrespectful, and they're saying Melnick and Pierre should be ashamed for how they've handled this.
Because let the season play out first, right?
Let the season play out. They said we're going to reevaluate it at the end of the year, as they usually do with these coaches. Usually they get fired at come the last game of the season. That's just how it works. That's standard protocol. But here they lead you on thinking he's going to be good for the next couple months, and now he gets the can.
Oh my God! Do you think they did this just to make him a scapegoat for all the Trade Center drama?
No,
let's take our spotlight away from our stupidity and put it on this. Let's put Guy Boucher firing in the spotlight instead of our stupid shit.
Hey, that's a thoughtful presumption, and there might be merit to that.
Thanks.
But I have another reason.
Okay, let's hear it.
I have a feeling Melnick. They lost to Ottawa the night before that firing, I think. Melnick gets out of bed, looks at the standings as he does every morning, and sees Ottawa dead last with a 5-point difference, something like that, between them and the Kings. 31st
It's nasty.
And 30th.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, shit. We're gonna lose. Colorado's gonna get the first overall pick." And it's gonna be the cherry on top of just this debacle that I'm getting ostracized for.
Oof.
And so I got to make a coaching change. And historically, when you make a coaching change, it kicks the players in the ass. They play harder. They get on a roll. And we got to get out of the basement here.
Oh, my God.
This to me is a last-ditch effort by this management group to try to just move up a spot or two so they can make their odds a little better of not looking like buffoons for taking Brady Tkachuk in last year's draft instead of hanging on to their Colorado pick. That's what I think this is all about.
If that is the case, Nick, it's way more sad than what I fucking said, because if these guys think that after this deadline they're going anywhere but down, they're stupid and crazy. A coaching change, Mark frickin' Crawford, he's not going to solve shit. And I think the quote was when they fired Guy, they said, "We don't like the habits that our players are showing lately, and we just wanted a change here." And I'm just like, you guys are so rude, man. The habits that you guys are forming, come on. That's brutal. I don't like that at all. Maybe he was mouthing off, Nick. Maybe Guy Boucher was finally stepping up and saying his piece about how stupid everyone was, and they were just like, "Yep, we got to get rid of this guy. He's not fitting into the long-term picture here," and maybe that's why he went. What a joke this guy is.
Yeah, I mean, you're putting you're basically putting this last-ditch effort ahead of human beings, personalities, people you want to treat with respect, dignity.
Yes.
And you're just throwing it out the wayside, his family, his kids, all that stuff. And over a long shot to move up a couple spots in the standings, to give yourself like a 5% chance better of not having Colorado get that first pick. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts.
And for the record, I think Colorado, the way the the draft race is shaping up, I think 1 and number 2 are very, very close in caliber. I'm talking about Hughes and Kako. So all of a sudden it becomes, if Colorado gets one of those two guys, they can basically call it a first overall. And either of those guys will make Brady Tkachuk look like a horse, like a piece of crap. So I think it's just become harder and harder on these guys, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're starting to feel the pinch here about this draft pick.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a lot of pressure on those players. I mean, your first line now is Chris Tierney.
I don't want to know.
Chris Tierney, Brady Tkachuk, and Colin White's your top.
Oh, sorry, kids, you're gonna have to carry this load here. Oh my God,
yeah.
19-year-old.
The other night they got spanked in Tampa.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Like you would guess. But then they did play in Florida tonight. They beat Florida. So the Crawford era is actually going pretty steady so far.
You know what? I didn't watch the game, but I gotta commend John Cooper here. I'm sure there was a little bit of let's go easy on these guys after it was 5-1. There must have been. I think if they really wanted to, they could have put up 10 goals against these guys. If they really wanted to, but maybe Ottawa's just going to switch into like a defensive shutdown, everything, clog up everything you can, don't worry about scoring kind of team. But Nick,
who knows?
We should move on to the trades. We should. Yes, I'll save my my story for the end, just because we're 20 minutes in now, and we should probably get going here. But let's begin. And the way we're going to do this, guys, mostly is. For the most part, we're going to go chronological again after the Duchene trade, and we'll just say who went where in the deal, and then we'll give our opinions on the trade as well as the outlook for the teams involved. So, we might as well start with Columbus, because I'm just going to package all their guys together here and just talk about them as a whole. So Columbus acquires Duchene, Dzingel, Kincaid, McQuaid. They essentially didn't give up any legitimate roster players if you don't count Duclair, but they did give up a lot of picks, a lot of nice high picks. So a lot of value went the other way, but they've really bolstered their roster here, Nick. So I think Dzingel, because we did Duchene, I think Dzingel is a legitimate middle six guy. I think he makes that forward group look a lot more deep on paper. McQuaid, he addresses a heart and soul character ad for this group who some would say they lack a little bit of character so far. I mean, you've got guys who want to leave, you got this and that. So McQuaid kind of rubs off this energy of I'm kind of willing to do anything to help this team win kind of thing. And I think they really need that. He also adds some toughness and some just, grit to the bottom half of the defense core. So I like those two moves a lot. And then Kincaid, Kincaid's a decent, insurance goalie, if you will, in case things go totally south. Now, here's the thing, Nick. This is where things get a little tricky and dicey. The roster looks great. I think the roster looks amazing on paper. Right now, I don't think they're in a playoff spot as we speak right now. They got a game tonight, but right now they're not in a spot. How do you think this trade shakes out so far as a team of Columbus who is all chips in, full go, and we're gonna go for this thing?
Well, as you know, I had them pegged into the playoffs even before this trade. I was high on this team, regardless. Maybe even win the Metro. So I immediately I liked it, and I made that point earlier. I said, you already got bad news when you were told the UFAs weren't coming back. So at this point, you may as well just make the best of this situation, add up all your guys, make the most of having these two UFAs on your team, and make a push. Salvage the future. I don't care. And to me, you didn't even, destroy your future prospect crops because you didn't trade your best prospects. You traded some B prospects and some picks. It's not a big deal. So to me, I love the deal. I love McQuaid. I think the Leafs should have got him. Right shot D, used to play for Boston. I think the Leafs really could have needed him, especially when you look at their depth now with all the injuries. They're falling like flies on the Leafs pairings.
No, that's a good point.
So I think Kekalainen outsmarted Dubas on that one, and I love the moves, and we're gonna see what happens. I know they're not right in a playoff spot right now, but I think they'll certainly get in. Very very tight between them, Carolina, Montreal, Pittsburgh. Islanders and Washington look pretty good, but those first 4 teams I just mentioned all look to be fighting for a spot. So I think they'll get in. I like the move. I think it was the only move they had given the circumstances. And kudos to Yarmo. He's got quite the cojones. He's got the cojones to make a deal like this. He's put his chips all in, and I commend him for it.
Yeah, and yeah, Nick, I think I like this team in to make the playoffs as well. What I will say is they really want to avoid that Atlantic bracket. If they can stay in the Metro bracket somehow by getting the number 1 wildcard spot, or even jumping into that top 3 in the Metro, then I think they've got a good shot at coming out of the East Finals, or getting to the East Finals. I really think that they can match up against a Pittsburgh, an Islanders team, even a Washington. I think they can have their second shot and find a way to win against those teams. I think this hinges on 3 key personalities here, Nick, how this is all going to shake out. First is Torts. So how's Torts going to pull this roster together to get these personalities to gel, to get the outside noise, if you will, to just kind of settle itself down? We're talking about Bobrovsky, Panarin, and people are going to be on these guys all the time. Every time they lose, they're going to be like, what if these guys traded all this shit and don't make the playoffs? So Torts is going to be a massive figure in the way things go here. Next is going to be Bobrovsky, and that's an obvious one. He doesn't really want to be there, but you know what? It's crunch time. It's playoffs time, but he's never been a really great playoff goalie. So can he step up and prove himself? He's also playing for money here. He's on a contract year, so that's huge. And then something I mentioned last week really quickly is Pierre-Luc Dubois. And can he carry that second line on his own and really find a way to mesh with guys like Dzingel and those kinds of guys to create a really strong depth kind of high-powered scoring there. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I think they've got a really good shot here if they can stay in the Metro bracket. But after this, you're looking at a couple of years of just being a not a horrible team, not a great team, just a mediocre team. I think for a good couple of years, if none of these guys sign back. So it looks pretty interesting for Columbus. I think they've got a shot here, Nick. I like what they've done.
Now, other than Columbus, who made some marquee moves before the deadline, the biggest move on the day of the deadline was, of course, Mark Stone being shipped to the Vegas Golden Knights. Kyle, what did you make of this deal? I know you're not too high on Vegas as a team in general, but boy, oh boy, after this move, you got to like them.
Nick, there's a lot to digest here. A lot to digest. And what I'll start with is the biggest part of this trade is the swapping of the Lindberghs. A very underrated point is we're just 2 teams who both have a Lindbergh, and they're just swapping the Lindberghs. I could not believe my eyes when I saw this. I'm like who thought of this? Like, did they just let's throw Oscar in there because it'd be hilarious? So we've got Vegas acquiring Mark Stone and Tobias Lindbergh, and Ottawa acquiring Brandstrom, Oscar Lindbergh, and a 2020 second rounder. Now, Nick, I gotta say, what was your initial right off the bat reaction to this trade?
Oh, to me, Vegas elevated miles up in my power rankings. I had them in the bottom of the pits I had them making the playoffs, but I didn't have them at the top. I had San Jose at the top, Winnipeg at the top, Nashville at the top, all 3 of those teams above them, maybe even Calgary too. And after this move, Mark Stone, this guy's Mr. Playoffs. This guy's Mr. Big Time Clutch Factor player. This guy is just character written all over him. He just tries so hard every time you see him on the ice. You want him on your playoff roster. And the fact Vegas got him, who already have arguably the best goalie in the league, and in my opinion, a very underrated defense core, This to me might tip things in their favor. I was very high on San Jose. You know, I'm a huge San Jose guy, but I don't know. Like, if I don't know what to tell you. Like, if they go 1v1 San Jose Vegas, I'm having a hard time picking San Jose right now.
Wow. So yes, let's dive into this Vegas team, as they're just so full of tricks here. And one thing I want to say before I jump in here is we have to pay respect to, obviously everyone always gives them credit for that 2017 year and how they built this team. And of course I'm referring to 17-18, but we have to really look at how they drafted in that year, because they were given three first rounders. They had Cody Glass, they had Nick Suzuki, and they had this Brandstrom guy. And Nick, what I have to tell you about this Brandstrom guy is people are talking about this guy as just a slight step behind your guys like Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes. This is a very, very legitimate prospect. So we have to really tip our hats to them just picking these assets up. Like, they've turned these assets into legitimate players, and now they're looking like one of the favorites out of the West. It's shocking when you see the roster. Like, last year we're like, oh, a bunch of fucking no-names, and now it's like, oh my god, this could be deadly. I think they're legitimate in every way, right up and down, depth, you name it. Before this, Nick, Alex Tuck was their number one scorer. He's slotted on the third line right now. That's what their depth is looking like. You mentioned some other teams in the West, some heavyweights. I put them ahead of guys like San Jose and Calgary right now. I think they're on par in terms of shot and talent with like a Winnipeg, Nashville. But I don't see Calgary lasting a 7-game series with this team. No way. San Jose is another story. I think they've got more tricks up their sleeve than I give them credit for. But I think those three teams that I mentioned there, Winnipeg, Nashville, and now Vegas, they're all looking like the heavyweights here.
Yeah, it's going to be really tight, and as everyone knows, that's a very tough building to play in come playoff time. Mm-hmm. So if they can get home ice in a series, I mean, that would be huge. If there was anything lacking on this team, it was depth up front. I know you guys got like Marchessault, Carlson, Pacioretty, Stasny, but you needed another piece, and this is like above and beyond what I think they needed. And so that's why I'm so high on them now. Not to mention they just came off a run. They got the veteran experience. They know what it is like to play on a big stage. I thought this team was going to be one and done this playoffs. It was a great story last year, and that was it. And it seems like they've just flipped the script here. So very excited about that. And like you said with Ottawa, I thought it was finally a good return for them after what a lot would call some terrible moves from Pierre Dorion. Not getting enough for any of the deals he'd made, whether it be Carlson, Duchene, Zingle, you name it. But this certainly was a big win. I mean, if you weren't going to get that top line center, there's Glass. Getting this defenseman, I think, was a very good, like runner-up trophy, you know?
Yeah, and I'll be 100% honest, Nick. When I was watching this trade break, and the first thing it said was like Mark Stone has been traded to Vegas. And the first thing I said to the people around me, I said, they better be getting Cody Glass. If they don't get a first rounder, they better be getting Cody Glass, or this is a loss. So when I saw Brandstrom and the second, my immediate reaction was, this is not good for Ottawa. But then, of course, I had to do a little bit of research into the kid, and I'll admit I wasn't very studied up on him. And he's like I said, he's a very, very, very highly regarded guy, maybe a little bit sheltered because he was in Vegas. But he's a small defender, 5'10", but he moves really, really well and has excellent vision. I think I'd like to compare him to like an upgraded Sam Girard in the way he plays, because he's just so good on the breakout, fantastic skater, and hopefully he can add a bit of mass to him. But hey, if you're getting an upgraded Sam Girard, and you're picturing him beside Thomas Chabot for years to come, it's a good picture, Nick. Like this guy's legitimate, and it just means that you don't have to wait and put so much chance into like a first rounder. Like if this was a 2019 first, what are you really gonna do with that? It's a 50-50 shot it becomes a player, and there's no way it would be a guy like Brandstrom. So I think this is a real win for Ottawa once you really look at it, and I think they're all very excited for their the future of their D in the capital of Canada there.
Yeah, I mean him and that French Canadian Chabot. I mean, that's a lethal combo.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So good on Pierre on that one. Now moving on, because we still got a few moves to dissect here.
Oh yeah.
Rivals of Vegas, Winnipeg and Nashville made big moves. Winnipeg started it off with acquiring Kevin Hayes.
Yep.
The Boston boy. The Boston accent, character beyond belief. I loved this deal. I know you didn't.
Correct.
I thought, that not only a guy who can produce a big body that could, distribute the puck to guys like Ehlers and Connor and really help insulate that second line there and help on the second power play. He's just a perfect depth defenseman. He's like what Paul Stastny provided last year. He's exactly what they need. And like I said, character beyond the roof. A kind of guy you want on your playoff roster. So I was a big fan of that one. And then, of course, their other rival, Nashville, added Michael Granlund and Wayne Simmons, who, again, I love the Simmons move. I don't think they gave up too much for him. I think it was like Ryan Hartman and a pick, not a very high pick. And Simmons, and I think he's going to fit in great there. Him and PK are good pals. He's going to help out on their power play right now. And Granlund, this is a guy who's underrated, under the radar kind of guy. He got just under 70 points the last 2 years. So the fact they added him for, what was it? I think it was just it was
Fiala. Fiala.
Yeah, the fact it was just Fiala for him 1v1. I kind of like that return. And I think Nashville and Winnipeg really bolstered their rosters here. So what did you make of both moves?
I'll start with the Hayes. I mean, when I saw this, again, I did not like the first look at this, Nick, and it's gonna have to grow on me because I always saw Kevin Hayes as like a third line center on a good team and on a second line center on a bad team. Like the guy's career high is 49 points, and he's 26. Now, mind you, he's having a super breakout year. But the guy's career high is 49 points. I don't know why everyone was tabbing this guy as this guy's a legit second line center and it's going to be a great fit. And I'm like, come on, guys. And I want to know where you got this whole character thing. Like who are you getting this information from? The character line.
The Spit and Chicklets podcast. He's been on the podcast a couple times, and this guy's a great guy. Just character beyond through the roof. Super funny guy.
Shit.
I think he's going to add a lot to that dressing room.
The thing is, I don't know. Like a lot of these top teams, because as soon as this trade was made, I looked at your top guns, your top teams, and I looked at the center depth. And a lot of our favorite teams here, they've got great 1-2 punches. You see that in Tampa. You see that in Toronto, Pittsburgh, Washington, now Columbus. And a lot of these teams actually don't have a very star-studded second-line center. Like Nashville, they have Turris, Stastny in Vegas, who I think is better than Hayes, to be totally fair. And I see now that Brian Little has moved to the wing. So you got, I think, is it Corey Kopp on the third line there in Winnipeg? I just don't know. Like, I don't know enough about this Kevin Hayes guy, but I was watching him earlier today against Columbus there, and he looked a little slow, man. I'm telling you. Like, if you have Kevin Hayes playing with Patrick Laine, you might have the slowest second line in the entire NHL. I don't like that. The guy's huge. The guy he's massive. I don't know how tall he is, but he just looks like a brick out there.
Yeah, I mean, he is what he is. A power forward. You may say it's a dying phenomenon in the NHL nowadays, given where the game's headed with speed and skill. But I think there's still a place for it, especially when you need to win 16 hard-nosed games in the playoffs. And when you already have a excellent center in Scheifele on your first line, I think Hayes is more than adequate for a second line role. And he'll provide secondary offense. He doesn't have to be the guy. He's just there for depth scoring, second power play, second line. He can pass the puck to Ehlers. You got a quick guy like Ehlers with a big power forward distributor like Hayes. I think it's a good duo.
Yeah,
and I think it's really going to help. Ehlers is a fantasy impact now that he has an actual center to play with here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not down on it. I like it, like I said from the top, and I think you're gonna have to wait to see what he does in the playoffs. I think that's when really this trade will come into fruition, and we can evaluate it for real. Is the playoffs here?
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll wait and see. But for now, I like it.
Mm-hmm. One more quick thing I want to say on Vegas and one of their more underrated trades, Winnipeg, because I know they made a flurry of trades right at the end. They acquired Matt Hendricks, and Matt Hendricks from Minnesota, Nick. And why this is a very key move is because of an interview from Bruce Boudreau, the maniacal raging moron. He said Matt Hendricks was his favorite player that he ever coached. This guy's got character out the wazoo like no one else we've ever heard of, apparently. Based on this interview, he said, I know why they picked him up. And Matt Hendricks was in Winnipeg earlier in his career, and this is just, to me, it's like, we need this guy in the room for this run. So I think that was a very, very silky move by Cheveldayoff there. I like that a lot. Now let's get to the Nashville guys really quick. I gotta say, that Granlund trade knocked me off my frickin' chair. Like, they shafted Minnesota hard. I think Fiala's I think a bit younger, and I think he's a fine player. But Granlund is a legit like top tier second liner or even a first liner. This guy's awesome. I don't understand how this was a 1-for-1 deal. I simply don't know what Minnesota was doing. And Granlund's on a friendly contract. He's making about 5.7, and he's got a year left on it even after this year. So it just makes Nashville look like they fleeced Minnesota hard here. And then to talk about another crazy trade, Simmons, they got for Ryan Hartman and a conditional fourth. Like, if that was all you had to give up for Simmons, it looks like a last minute, oh shit, we don't have anything else to give kind of deal. It's just, that one blew my mind too. We were all kind of scratching our heads because, Simmons is a character guy. Again, we're using the word a lot, but I mean, I'm sure you saw the Philadelphia tribute speech in the dressing room after the outdoor game there. Those guys seemed to really love Simmons in that room. And he looked like he was a really key part of that group character-wise. So Nashville is getting a top-quality skill guy in Granlund and a top-quality grinder who can score character guy in Simmons. And this just looks awesome for Nashville. I think these guys were quietly one of the bandits of this draft. I mean, and Hartman going the other way, big freaking deal for these guys. His career high is 31 points. Now, I know he's pretty young, but he's a bona fide bottom sixer, absolutely. So way to go on Nashville. That's awesome for them. Makes them really scary too.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pierre said it best. It was an arms race, and all these teams adding these major players.
Yeah,
and it's going to be a hell of a playoffs. And how it all plays out. Winnipeg gets their center. Nashville gets the forwards that they needed, given they're struggling on offense. We all know they have the goaltender and the defense to win a cup, but they don't have quite the scoring touch. This is really going to go a long way in helping in that regard. Vegas gets the big stud and Stone. Sharks, they add some low-key depth, as they usually do, acquiring Gustav Nyquist, kind of an under-the-radar, very Doug Wilson kind of move. In San Jose that he's known for. So all these teams adding. Even Calgary got a guy called Fantenberg on D. This guy used to be in LA. I'm very high on this guy, and not a lot of people know him. I think he's a good depth defenseman. So the West was fascinating.
Oh yeah.
And because of that, the East, they kind of got they kind of got shanked on a lot of these deals. No real big acquisitions. I mean, Johansson goes to the Bruins. They needed some depth on offense. They get that. The Leafs, they get Pierre Petan.
I have to say something on this.
To solidify the fourth line. A lot more quiet in the East, right?
Yeah. I think what we saw, Nick, was one of these tactics emerging from these deadlines is you're watching your rivals. So when people see Winnipeg make the Hayes move, it starts a chain reaction. Okay, now we have to do this. Now we have to do that because Vegas did that. We have to do this because Nashville did that. It starts a chain reaction. And I think that's very much dominated by which conference you're in. So the West guys are looking at the West because, let's be honest, they're more focused on the short term when they're looking at getting through the playoffs. They're not really looking at the East because it could be any one of those guys. Now, when you look at the East, we saw Columbus make a bunch of moves, and I thought for sure that we'd see Pittsburgh do something, but we didn't see anything from them. And we didn't see anything too much from those East guys, like you said, but I really want to touch on this Nic Petan move because I think it's underrated in several ways. So Nic Petan was a legend in junior hockey. He went to Memorial Cup finals where he lost to the Halifax Mooseheads of the Jonathan Drouin and McKinnon era. Like, there's no way he's winning there. He went to 2 World Juniors, 1 winning gold. He never got his shot in Winnipeg for, various reasons. Some say depth, some say he just didn't really fit in. But make no mistake, Nick, they got a guy who's still got top 6 potential in him somewhere. I know he's going to slot into the fourth line, and there's simply no room for him on this team. But he's really skilled, and I think Dubas absolutely loves this guy. Like, Petan scored his first goal the other day, and I think Dubas was celebrating harder than Petan was. He was giving high fives to all his associates in the box. It was amazing to watch. And the biggest thing here, Nick, is that we added a little bit more flow to the Leafs bench, which is great in terms of hair. The guy looks like a
top 3 for sure.
The guy looks like a legend out there. It looks amazing. Yeah. So we've added beard power with Muzzin and flow with Petan. Right. This team's ready for a run. This team's ready.
Okay, simmer down.
Nic Petan will be the... You know what, Nick? I'm not kidding when I say this. Nic Petan might be my favorite player on the Leafs right now.
Okay, simmer down.
I just want to see him win. I want to see him win.
The reality is this team did not address their most glaring need.
No. Oh, God, no.
And it's really coming back to nick them in the ass right here.
I think...
Because this is bad. They needed to add another defenseman. Everyone's been saying it. And literally the day after the deadline, they lose Gardner, they lose Dermott, and now you're rocking Marinson, Oshiganov, and Hull.
It's a comedy.
You're 5-6.
It's comedy. It's amazing.
Brutal. You're gonna now you're gonna lose home ice. There's no way you're catching Boston with that D for the next 4 weeks.
Forget it.
Now you lost home ice, and you're in the same position as last year versus Boston, and they get the advantage. On home ice.
Yep. And so we saw.
I'm not pleased, and it's. I know Dubas. He's bullish on his defense. We've been saying it for a while, but they needed to address the need, and if they don't make it in the playoffs, people are going to point back to this. I certainly am going to point back to this and hold Kyle Dubas accountable.
And you said it yourself. McQuaid, how much did it take to get that guy?
It was a 4th rounder, something like that.
Not a whole lot, exactly. Simmons, how much did it take? You could have you could have given half your shit for Simmons at that rate. Like, come on, man. It's like he just kind of sat back on his laurels and said, I did my Muzzin move, I might do a Nic Petan move, and I think I'm good. Like, at some point, I know, and the whole skill thing, we're a skilled team, and that's all we need. I mean, you need balance. At the end of the day, we look at the Islanders game, if we want to have an example. The Islanders played them tough, and the Islanders have some of the best 4th-line guys in the entire NHL. You've got guys like Clutterbuck and Martin who are just scrappy, grinding guys. and even Komarov and these kinds of guys. And you saw the Leafs just kind of put the tail between the legs and let this game play out as it would. And it was some people, including Bob McKenzie, who, you might know him, they said it looks like there's a blueprint to beat the Leafs, and that's what it looked like. It looks like some of these games where it gets tough, he called it the blueprint to beating the Leafs. And wouldn't you know it, I think the Boston Bruins play that game very well, which is quite disheartening for Leafs fans here.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. And I think, any Leafs fan, I don't care how bullish you are on the team and how biased you may be, I think everyone, you got to be honest with yourself at this point and really recognize that there was an opportunity there to make your team better in a year that a lot of people are saying this might be your biggest chance, given you have all those upcoming RFAs still under contract, the Kapanens and the Jansons of the world, the Gardners. This to me is a head scratcher, and I think it has this, along with the Garrett Sparks over McElhenney move before the season, are kind of the two things that Dubas is going to be saddled with here in terms of things he didn't really get right. Hey, I could be wrong. Maybe they win the Cup this year. Who knows? Maybe they re-sign Gardner. I don't know, but I'm a little confused.
Yes, and again, it's one of those wait and see, time will tell, but it just seems like every time the Leafs get... Oh no, I heard a stat, Nick. It's very telling that whenever the Leafs have played a top 5 defensive team, I think that's how the line went, they're like 3 for 8. They're trash. When they play a team that has any sort of focus on defense and shutting down, they're bad. Like, they're 3 and 8. They haven't gotten it done, and I'm telling you, if they lose in the first round, and I know like management's done a great job, and the Shanna plan, the Shanna plan's gone so well. Drafted nice young guys, like, oh, this is awesome. People are gonna be talking like crazy if they don't win one round. Could you imagine all this building, all this momentum, all the storylines, all the rubbing it in the face of Montreal Canadiens fans every time they beat them, and they don't win a round this year? It's insane. You got Tavares, and where are you? But like, we're not there yet, Nick. We're not there yet. They might surprise us, but we've got a lot more to see. Let's just say that there's nothing set in stone right now, and there's a lot to see, but. Do you want to quickly touch on the Islanders Tavares saga that happened on Thursday?
I think it's fitting we do. I mean, you mentioned top 5 defensive teams. Well, it just so happens they had to go into the Nassau Coliseum and play the best defensive team in hockey.
Indeed, they
did.
Boy,
oh boy, did they lay an egg.
They did. And this is so disappointing because, I mean, it drew such an interest from fans around the league, not just Toronto and Islanders fans, around the league, because this was the big move. It was the big Tavares rematch versus Islanders in their building. So we all knew it would be nasty. We all knew there'd be some boos, some hilarious chants. And I tuned in for the whole game despite being in a commercial, Nick. I was in a commercial watching this game. I was a background figure in a Kraft Crave commercial, and I was watching the game while they were shooting these lines. I'm not kidding. I had a headphone in with my phone kind of in the corner, and it was just, it was hilarious, but I will say, and it's just like a personal thing, I don't know what came over me, but I was sort of cheering for the Islanders in this one. I wanted to see them get their redemption. I wanted them to get closure on this whole business, and I wanted them to just have their satisfying victory and for us to put this all to bed. Because I think this was closure in a lot of ways. And what we saw was an Islanders team just hungry and fired up, and that building sounded amazing. And not just when they were saying horrible things, but when they were cheering on the Islanders, it sounded like a full-on playoff game, Nick. It was really incredible. that building's acoustics are on point. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I called it the most anticipated game of the year. It was my most anticipated game of the regular season.
Wow.
And it did not disappoint. I thought TSN did a great job with the pregame. You got to see Tavares' entire warm-up, the snakes thrown onto the ice,
Yeah.
the jersey thrown at him as he was coming off the ice for warm-ups. I thought it was all great. Great theater. If you're into just drama in sports, kind of interlocking, it was the best game of the year in my mind. It was the most entertaining game of the year to watch. It may have not been the most competitive. It may have been over 30 minutes in, which it certainly
Right.
was.
Yeah.
Halfway through that second, you knew where the game was going, who was going to win. But just that atmosphere, the tribute, the way Tavares had to respond, it was a hell of a moment, and it lived up to everything I wanted from it. And I was going for the Islanders.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see how the Leafs would deal with this adversity. And this, to me, was the most adversity they dealt with since that Game 7 against Boston where they blew the lead. A raucous atmosphere where you don't really know how to control yourself. Those young kids, they don't really know what to make of it.
No.
It was the first time since that game they had to deal with it, and they blew it.
Oh,
And
totally.
nobody responded for John Tavares. That game was supposed to be for John. If there's any character in that room, they got to look around and they got to say, this is for John. And the only guy who stepped up by the looks of it was Zach Hyman. Everyone else looked flustered.
Mm-hmm.
And there's again yet another cause for concern with this Leafs team. There seems to be like a lack of character, a lack of big time finish, a lack of Bergeron on this team.
Oh,
and it frightens me.
you just
really
dropped
does.
the line. Yeah,
To
Nick,
me, it was like a dress rehearsal for a big playoff game, and they
Absolutely.
kind of blew it.
No, exactly. Like this of all games, you've got there's pressure, there's the atmosphere. Both of those things mimicked playoff level intensity, and they came up and they laid an egg. Now what we saw was, for the first 10 minutes, it looked okay. It looked like we might have a game here, a back and forth game. And it looked like right after that disallowed goal, it just fell apart. They're just like, you know what? It almost felt like they're too like prima donna, too good to try in front of this crowd. Like they just got beat down morally. They got beat. Their morale got beat down by this crowd, and they just caved. And then how can you not try all the way to the end? They just turned into a bunch of little ducklings. It was really sad to see, and I feel bad for Tavares because he probably felt so much inner turmoil, inner guilt and shame to be just spanked. And I'm sure every single time he touched the puck, he was feeling that crowd. So it's just, again, it's a character check, and what we saw was they didn't really show up. And it's totally legitimate to be worried about this team because it's not the first time this has happened, as you said. But I don't know. Well, we're about to see a lot more of those big gut check games. The problem here is, Nick, and tell me if you think this is the same. The way the standings are right now, it's almost like they're in a spot where they can't really catch Boston, but they can't really be caught by Montreal. They're in such a no man's land kind of spot. It's like, are you really being pressured down this stretch here? Because they're too far away, Boston. But at the same time, Montreal, they're not going to really catch you. So if you stay cruising, they can just stay exactly where they are. There might be they might be a victim of that down the road, but Mike Babcock is going to have to really wrestle these guys. Like, you got to shake the cage of some of these stars and just kind of say, like, are you going to be here for me when shit hits the fan and when I need you to play a certain way and you can't do it? It's interesting little storyline.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a tough spot they're in, and I don't think Boston's too far. I just think I see one team the way they're trending. I see the other team the way they're trending. And to me, I just don't think that gap between those two teams is going to get any smaller in the near
Yeah.
future. But one thing I did want to touch on with the Tavares thing is two questions for you.
'Kay.
A, were you surprised with the reception? Did you think he was going to get booed or cheered? Like, were you at all surprised? Because I had a friend here in Kingston who thought they were going to honor him and cheer for him, and boy, oh boy, was he wrong. And my second question
Yeah.
is, do you think it was deserved? Like, what did you think of it? Do you think they were in their right to do that, or were you kind of put off by it and thought it was kind of rude?
When I went into this game, I'll be 100% honest, I thought they would do exactly as they did, except for the video tribute. I thought maybe you'd hear a decent half-hearted cheer for the video tribute, because, like, you know, when you see those highlights, old memories come back and just they're happy, and you know that one goal where he put them into the second round, that still like really sticks with me against Florida there. So I thought they'd get some cheers there, but am I surprised about all the other antics? Absolutely not. I think this was a long time coming. I think this has been festering in this fan base for a long time, and I feel like this was their one stage, Nick, to really let their voices heard. Have their voices be heard. I think as individual fans, they can all say what they want and, you know, do this, but this was their day for, like, we're going to do all this kind of crazy shit. The media is going to go crazy for us, and we're going to finally let them know how exactly how we feel. And I think it got to a point, Nick, where there are a good chunk of Islanders fans who are totally fine with what John Tavares did, but the guys who really hated what he did were the guys who were going to buy these tickets. You know what I mean? Like, if those guys who are pissed are going to buy one game this whole year, they're going to pony up maybe even twice the cash so they can let their voices heard in this game. So I'm not really surprised. And to be honest, I don't really blame them either. Like, a lot of people were actually praising this fan base on their passion, like good or bad. This fan base was just raucous and crazy and passionate. And some guys on the radio even said, I wish the Leafs fans were more like this. Like, our fans don't even sit down for the start of the game. They're too busy eating sushi and caviar. Like, it's really cool to see a team, a fan base or a crowd just so kind of in sync with each other and all in one kind of motion. So I think that was really cool, and I think they totally deserve to say whatever they want. I don't like the throwing the jersey thing. I mean, throwing the snakes on the ice, you know, you kind of expect goofy stuff like that, but don't try to throw it at them. Like, come on, that's a little immature.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with you. I think the fans are in their right to say that. I follow some loyal fans on Twitter, and I get their reasons. And it's not so much why he left or that he left, it's how he left. The fact he led them on to saying he was going to sign and ultimately didn't. It makes sense, and they pay a high price to go to that game, and it's in their right to you know, receive him whatever way they want to. But I would agree, if there was one troubling spot, it was that tribute. It was a well done tribute, well done by Lou Lamoriello, the GM, and the players even saluted him. But man, when some of those shots on the tribute came where he was helping those sick kids and doing the charity work, and they're still booing him during some of that stuff, that made me tremble a little. Like that hurt a little.
Yeah.
Because at some point you just got to embrace the past. Like, this guy went out of his way to do stuff like that, and you're still giving him shit. I mean, that was kind of eerie. But hey, other than that, it was a raucous house. I can't wait for the first round. It's going to be played there at the Nassau Coliseum.
Yes.
It's going to be great.
Wow.
And I really hope it's a hell of a series.
And some people were actually calling that building one of the top 3 loudest in the entire NHL, which is just an awesome atmosphere to play in. Now, I want to ask you quickly, just relating back to the trade deadline with this team, the Islanders didn't do a single thing, Nick. Is that a good move or a bad move for this team?
Making no moves?
0 moves. So I think they saw themselves, like, no one really expected them to be in this position, I think, including themselves. So I think they they're kind of sticking to the plan. So I think they're gonna ride what they have, and kind of just go from there. So I personally didn't mind it, because I don't want you to mortgage the future because you want to make a run this year. I respect Lamoriello in sticking with his original plan.
Yeah, no, to me it was very Lamorellian. I mean, you keep the lineup intact, keep the chemistry intact, the relationships intact, and you don't really make a huge acquisition. And I kind of liked it. You don't mortgage the future. You don't trade away a top pick like that skilled forward they have, or that defenseman they recently drafted.
Dobson.
Yeah, Dobson. I mean, like, you don't mortgage the future when you're playing with house money anyways, right? They are playing with house money. No one saw them being at where they were at this point, and they're just going to ride it out and see what happens. And they're not going to make a grand move that's maybe going to ruffle any feathers in the dressing room, because to me it looks like top to bottom, line 1 to line 4, they've got a hell of chemistry. That fourth line, that Cizikas Martin line is just nuts. I mean, to me they look just fine. The goaltending's stout. I have no problems with what Lamoriello did.
Yeah, plus I think they really feed off that underdog mentality, and I think they've been riding that all year. And if they were to get like a big name guy, I think that might actually disrupt things a little bit. So another good reason for them to stay put. But something a lot of people were criticizing was Calgary's decision to do nothing, because I mean, these guys aren't necessarily in any sort of retool or rebuild. They're just a legitimately good team. But do you see this team as a team that should have stayed pat, knowing that, you know, they're out west and all the other guys are building? Like, their main competitors all made significant upgrades, and Calgary just stays put, especially with the goaltending situation. I get not making a goaltending move in the middle of the year, but this was a little bit curious to me. I think Calgary might have wanted to make a move here.
Well, like I said, Kyle, they did get Oscar Fantenberg.
Oh, come on. What is he, a 7th D?
Fantenberg.
No. I looked at that trade and I scratched it from my memory right away. I'm like, this is a nothing move. And what else you got? What else you got here? That's nothing.
But he's big. He played under Daryl Sutter. He's a 5'6" defenseman. He's going to be just fine.
You know who their second line center is here?
Oh, I agree. They should have added it up front. Who
the hell is Backlund? Mm-hmm. I know who he is, but he's not a second line guy on a team looking to make it out of the West. This is ridiculous. You know what, Nick?
Maybe they're just confident. Maybe they just like their team. They've won like 7 in a row until last night. They're leading San Jose and Vegas by quite a margin. They must like something on this team.
I think they're overconfident.
It's not like this is some wild card team that just snuck in and they need a little extra boost. The fact is, this is the second best team in the NHL, right behind Tampa. Do they really need to make a move given their success to this point?
I think their success to this point is actually screwing them right now, because they're certainly not. Maybe a little bit, Nick, but they're certainly not in such an authority position as Tampa to be like, yeah, we're good enough to not make a move here. Like, if Winnipeg, Nashville, and Vegas can build up and buck up a couple, like a first rounder and whatnot, I think Calgary is dead in the water this year. I don't think they have the capability to make serious noise. And to be honest, Nick, I wouldn't even be surprised if they were knocked out in the first round by some surprise like wild card team. It wouldn't blow me away. Like, if they face Dallas and we saw some crazy surge from those Dallas guys and Zuccarello starts firing on all cylinders, I wouldn't be surprised if they lose. Fuck, I don't like Calgary at all, I'll be honest.
Wow, that's harsh.
Yeah. No, I like, after the first line, this team doesn't do anything for me. I'm sorry.
The D doesn't get you excited.
I like the D. I really like the D.
He's
but
great.
then I look at the goaltending and I'm like, I don't trust these guys. There's no way I trust these guys. Mike Smith and frickin' Riddick.
I don't trust Smith. I think that guy should retire.
Exactly, but
He's just bad. That guy belongs in beer league.
are they going to be? Is he going to be the number one guy come playoff time?
I've been hearing some takes saying that of the two he is, and that scares me. I
Yeah.
think Riddick's the much better goalie, but I don't even think that's saying something. I don't think saying David Riddick is a better goalie is saying that much. I think he's marginally better.
Yeah, and the fact that we
So,
even have to have
yeah.
a conversation between the two is a little bit frightening here. So that's why I just don't like. Look at the other guys: Rene, Fleury, Hellebuck. Like the talent there is far superior to anything they have in Calgary. I don't see it for this team this year, not even close. Maybe you know what? Maybe they don't either, and that's why they didn't make a move. It's very possible, very possible. Who knows? But I don't like them that much. I think they can burn in hell. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I don't disagree with you. If it's Colorado versus them, Dallas
Oh.
against them,
I'd love that. Colorado beating Calgary in the first round. I'd love that.
they'd
That'd be
love that
amazing.
too. I think they're looking at that matchup and kind of salivating.
Yeah.
So, hey, we'll see.
Oh
But
my God.
I agree. I think it's like it's like the Islanders. You're not like the Islanders where you're playing with house money, where you
No.
really weren't expected to be there. So you can't compare them to them. You can't compare them to Tampa and saying, oh, they're so good they don't need to add. So if they're not in one of those boats and they're simply this competitive team who needed to add and they didn't add, I think there's merit to that. So it's similar to the Leafs. I think they're kind of similar, right? I mean, the GM should have made a move, should have addressed somewhere, didn't, and come to the playoffs, if they're knocked out in the first round and it's an early exit, you'll look back at the deadline. I think you can write that script for both the Leafs and Calgary if it in fact goes that way.
Absolutely. And Nick, I just had a journalist moment because I just thought of a crazy scenario.
What's that?
Arizona slips in to this wild card
You're not
race.
going there, are you?
They face Calgary and they fucking win. They beat Calgary.
Come on, you're the last Arizona Coyotes fan.
Oh no. I would never cheer for Arizona except this particular scenario. I might. Just for the storyline here. Like no one's been looking at this. Arizona's right. Arizona's ahead of Colorado right now, but no one is giving them the time of day to make this run. It's just hilarious. So if they end up getting that playoff spot, I'll just be so happy, just so happy. And I hate their roster. Don't get me wrong here. There's nothing of value there for me. Nothing at all. I'm gonna like when Barrett Hayton comes along. That's great. But man, Galchenyuk, Keller, fucking, I don't like who, Schmaltz. Fuck these guys. There's no way. They don't deserve to be there. But you know what? If they are, I'll be cheering, big time. That'd be awesome.
You know, you brought up Arizona. One thing I will mention, given we're the fantasy playoff mood here, a guy by the name of Darcy Kemper. He's not owned in about half of Yahoo leagues right now. You got to get your hands on this guy. Like I said from the top of the show, fantasy playoffs is all about who's hot in the short term, not necessarily who is the bigger name in the long term. And I think a guy like Kemper merits attention here because this guy's rattled off something like 7 wins in a row. The splits are elite. You always want to have goalies who are fighting for a playoff spot around this fantasy playoff time because the teams play harder. They're more structured in front of them. It's just a good thing to have. Right now, he's about 51% owned. I have him in both my leagues. I think, like, for a perfect example, I think right now a guy like Darcy Kemper should be owned more than a guy like Martin Jones. Yes, one guy is on an elite team in Jones, but one guy's struggling, the other guy's hot, and when there's only 2 weeks left in your fantasy season, or 2 or 3 weeks left, which is at the point we're at right now, you're better off having the lesser-known hot guy than the overvalued cold guy in Jones. So, hey, don't be surprised if I go dropping Martin Jones this week, just so I can have room for Kemper on my team. So I that's just some advice to everybody here with the playoffs coming up. Darcy Kemper, he should be on your radar.
Now, Nick, I want to ask you a question that I think it's on a lot of people's minds just while we're on the fantasy topic. And There may not be a single right way to go about this, but we're all going to be facing situations where we've got a player on our roster who's been a good soldier for us, and he's gotten us to where we are, and we've trusted him, and he's been great. But Nick, he has a very poor schedule in a coming week. He's got, say, 2 games, and they're against good teams. And there's a guy on the wire who you don't really like as much. He's got 4 games. When do you draw that line, or when do you kind of pull the trigger and say, you know what, I'm going to have to drop a name guy to get the guy who's in the better spot? At what point in your mind does it happen in midweek when things aren't going like you said, like you thought, or does it happen early in the week to get ahead of this thing?
I think you have to be aggressive. I've always been aggressive in that respect.
Wow.
Dropping the bigger name guy to get the more advantageous guy with the schedule. I mean, I did it today. If you saw, I dropped a good lad in Evgeny Dadanov.
Yeah.
This is a guy who almost got 70 points last year, but the schedule's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I rather, like, it sounds crazy, but I rather have a guy like Travis Konechny than Evgeny Dadanov. One guy's more name brand than the other, but the reality is one guy's rolling, the other guy's cold. One guy's got a great schedule, the other guy has a terrible schedule. And when you're not keeping him at the end of the year, there's no point in having him on your team anymore if he's just going to have a shitty schedule. You're literally just keeping him for the safety in mind, saying, "Oh, I didn't drop that marquee player," just so you can sleep well at night and say, "Oh, I didn't drop that marquee player." Well, you're going to regret it if you end up losing in the end of the day, because you're going to say, "I could have had more games, or I could have potentially had more points if I picked up that lower, more low-key guy with the more advantageous schedule." So I think you have to be aggressive. You kind of have to cut ties with whatever old relationship you had with that marquee player and just drop him.
So
That's the
all
only way to
loyalty
play
is
it.
lost.
There's no other way to play it. If you're playing it the other way, you are doomed to fail.
Let me ask you a question, Nick. There's going to be nights when you've got one category to win, let's call it assists. You're looking at 2 guys in front of you. There's 2 options on the plate here. You got one guy who's been semi-cold, but he's your favorite player. You got one guy who's hot, but he's a freaking no-name. Let me paint it like this. You got Jonathan Drouin, who Kyle loves, and he's gone 5 games without a point, and he's facing, you know, a middle of the road team. Or you've got Anthony Mantha, who's got like a bunch of points, and he's facing a middle of the road team as well. Now, Jonathan Drouin is my heart pick. Like, he's the guy. If I want to just trust someone with my life, I'll give it to Joe. But if I'm going with my brain, I'm picking Mantha. What do you say to those people? It's a last ditch effort. You're looking for like a 3 assists big night. What goes down in your head?
Everything I just stated. You gotta cut those ties, and you gotta pick the more low key guy, and all those friendships you developed and the chemistry you developed with that player has got to go into the trash.
Wow.
You may not want to hear that. It might not be the fairy tale you want to hear.
I don't want to hear this.
That's how you win. That is how you win. You're listening from the expert here.
Come on. You're killing me here. I got to kill all my team. My whole team, I have to blow it up.
This is just my way of convincing you to drop those players. Who knows?
But you can't.
This is just...
You can't, because now you're throwing all our beloved fans out for a loop, and you wouldn't do that.
Right. I have to be a voice of reason on the show.
Yeah.
No, I said it as it is. I stand by that. You got to do it. You just got to.
Wow.
Unless you're keeping him. That's the only
No,
side.
yeah, exactly.
If you're keeping that player, then you got to look for, I get him the whole year next year? Okay, fine, I'll keep him. Like, you're not dropping Nathan McKinnon because he has one game that week. I don't even think you're allowed. Yeah, like, I don't care if he has one game versus Tampa. You don't drop Nathan McKinnon. You just don't. No. Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
That would be hilarious. But I don't know, Nick. We're about an hour and 20 into this thing. We've gone through our trades. We've gone through our Bachelor. We've had some chats. What do you think? Is this a good way to cap it off?
I think we got one more thing.
Oh.
You kind of left the fans on a cliffhanger last week.
Oh, yeah.
We said we have quite the day on Boots on the Ground, TSN Trade Center 2019. You
Yeah.
had a mission on your mind. You had an objective to complete. Please tell the fans, did you meet your objective?
Oh, okay. let me give you the story, fans. Well, some of you may not know, I find myself in a very privileged position to have a nice old internship at TSN here in Canada. For those of you who don't know, and obviously we're featuring Trade Center on Monday, and TSN is like the place for Trade Center, like in the world. NHL Trade Center, TSN is the go-to for Trade Center in the world. So
you guys, by the way, destroyed Sportsnet on the ratings front, I heard.
Oh,
just
God.
mangled them.
No, they don't. And if you saw the show, Nick, like you wouldn't believe, like when we were breaking the Mark Stone trade, they were 10 minutes behind. They, like as we were discussing the details of Mark Stone, they were still talking about frickin' Fiala, which happened a fucking hour ago. So they were brutal on that front. But as you guys know, we like Pierre McGuire on this show, and he's known to make some appearances on Trade Center there, and I knew he was going to be there, but I didn't know if I'd be able to, meet him and shake his hand like I've always dreamed of, and like Nick's always dreamed of. But I'm telling you, the stars aligned for me. And when they were taking us down to the studio, there's a little lunch table that lines the hallway right before you enter Studio 6. And who's the one guy who's noodling around the lunch table? It's Pierre McGuire. And I kid you not, ladies and gentlemen, he was on his own. He was the only guy picking away at the lunch, filling his plate. Absolutely filling his plate.
What is it, 11 a.m.? Not
no,
even lunchtime.
This is 11:30, and Pierre knows that he's getting lunch delivered at 12 o'clock.
Swiss LA, nonetheless.
Swiss LA. So he knows that lunch is coming for him, and yet he's still filling his plate because he knows it's not enough. So I look at the guy up and down. A couple things come to my mind. I say, first off, he's taller than I thought. I'll give him some credit here. He's about 5'11", just a little bit shorter than I am. And then you look at him from the side, Nick, and it just the beautiful image is shattered. The guy's an absolute penguin, especially in that little suit of his. He is so big in the middle compared to the rest of his body. It's proportionately off. It's just weird to look at. Like, you give him a side profile, he's got a gut, Nick, like you wouldn't believe. The guy just looks like a penguin, and when he walks, it's like he doesn't bend his legs. It's like he's holding the shit or something. Like he's just walking like waddling around, like looking for dead fish. Like, it's just weird. And then of course, guys, I did this all for you guys. I had to shake his hand. So I walked right up to him without hesitation. Walked up, threw my hand out, said, "Hey Pierre, nice to meet you. I'm a huge fan." And he took my hand a little reluctantly. I might add, a little reluctantly. He said, and I gave him kind of the story, like, yeah, I'm a big fan. I listen to you every day on TSN radio. And I mentioned my buddy Nick here. I said, my friend Nick and I have been following your work for some time now. So I gave him my respects, And what he did was he kind of looked at me, gave me a sideways glance with my hand in his hand. And he gave me one of these. He goes, "So what do you do around here?" And I'm just like, all right. I see how this is going. He's not too impressed with my line. So I basically told him what I did, and he warmed up to me a little bit more after that. Telling him I was an intern and I was a young student learning, so he was a bit warmer after that. And then I quickly asked him what his thoughts were on the trade, and this was the Kevin Hayes trade. He got really excited, really animated, gave me some pretty poor takes, if I might add. And then he just kind of waddled off into the distance. But But guys, I'm just really pleased to say that I said what I wanted to say, and he was a relatively nice guy. Like, I'm not gonna say he was like a warm, caring, just awesome dude, because he certainly didn't come across like that. He was pretty focused, honestly. But just a funny guy to see in real life. Just a funny character. Like I said, he's a penguin. He's thick in the middle, and he's a good guy. He's a good guy, and I got to meet him, which I find I thought it would never happen. So in 3 months, I've met Connor McDavid, the best player in the world, and Pierre McGuire, the weirdest man alive. So I feel pretty darn fortunate.
And yeah, I mean, hey, if you got stories within that short time about Connor McDavid and Pierre, I mean,
yeah,
I don't care what you say. Spit and Chicklets, they've got nothing on us.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the two biggest celebrities in hockey that, I mean, we got to meet firsthand.
Yeah. And that's true insider podcast material.
Oh
so
my God.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I may not sound too surprised right now, but I must have been on the phone with Kyle for a good half hour.
Oh, yeah.
Talking to him about this Pierre conversation. I needed to know everything because he's my icon. He's who I look up to, who I aspire to be in the future. Maybe not as fat, but boy, oh boy, what a moment.
No, and
what a moment.
Nick had me call him that night of, just so he could get my freshest memory out of me. And we really dissected the whole thing. So it was really good. I felt like I was kind of representing both of us when I was going up there. And guys, I wanted to mention the show. I really did, but I just knew in my head. I said, if for whatever reason he does listen to the show, there's like an 85% chance that we're ragging on him and we're just trashing this guy. So there's no way I'm mentioning the show. There's just no way.
I mean, if we we're likely going to run into him at some point again, whether it be in some bar in Buffalo or Detroit or Arizona, one of his hangouts when he's doing a game. We'll meet him someday yet again. And we don't want that going rough. We don't want that going poorly. I mean, we want to have a good reputation with this man.
Exactly.
Hey, if one more thing, if you're asking me if my perception of him has changed at all, because he's kind of coming off as a villain here, maybe not the fun-loving teddy bear that he comes off on television. That has not changed. I believe he must have been stressed. He must have been in a hurry. Duffy must have been in his ear saying, "Hey Pierre, we need you back here on the panel. Yeah, commercial's almost over." He must have been starving. Probably hadn't eaten since his workout early in the morning.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, let's be honest, Kyle. He probably didn't want to talk to some intern at that time.
Absolutely, Nick. It should be said. I saw all those guys kind of walking around. I was sitting right by the fridge for a good hour and a bit during this whole thing. I saw Bobby Mack walk within 2 feet of me, and he looked like he was just on another world. Like, he looked stressed, and he was kind of sweaty, and he was kind of shaking his head as if he had just been through the ringer. And I wouldn't have even wanted to approach this guy because he would have just swatted me away like a fly. But so no, if you consider all that, and it is pressure, and it's these guys have to be on point and on the ball. So I totally get why he'd be a little bit reserved and kind of in his own head. So I don't fault him for not giving me a big old hug or anything. So yeah, it was a pleasurable meeting, and I'm thankful that he actually took time out of his day to talk to me.
Yeah, and finally, I mean, yet again, everyone should applaud Kyle and the rest of the TSN crew. It was yet again another great show. I particularly liked the history of Trade Center segment with Jay and Dan.
Yeah.
Did you watch that?
I did, yeah.
Oh man, that was so funny. That was so well done.
Yeah, they're
it was
good.
like a documentary showing the history of Trade Center since 2003.
All
They straight up,
goofy
I
shit.
couldn't believe they used to have a rink in the studio with Darren Pang skating around in a suit showing drills. It was this was straight out of some 90s action movie or some shit like that. This was a wacky shit.
It makes this trainer look really tame, eh?
Yeah.
Really tame.
And Duffy, he looks like a totally different person back in 2003.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really good to see. It was very on point to say the least. So, yeah, another great year for the Trade Center coverage on TSN.
And O-Dog was an absolute star. I just thought he was hilarious all day. Just
Yeah,
with his
he
kind of
was
I don't care attitude and him tackling Trady and him saying I don't care about the coil trade or whatever he said when he was golfing. It was amazing. I was like, this guy's awesome. And
Yeah,
how
and-
and he
yeah.
would always disappear, Nick, like being behind set, like the producer lady, the director, she was always yelling, "Where the hell is O-Dog?" Because he was
Right.
always running off trying to find a bagel or something. Like, God, he was
Right.
hilarious.
Right, and just like when him and Pierre would like be sitting together because they sat right next to each other, like seldomly did they make eye contact with
Yeah,
each other, and when
yeah.
they did, there was just this miserable look on the O-Dog's face. Like, why am I listening to this penguin right now?
Yeah.
Like, you could tell there was some it was pretty heated there on the panel.
And you saw the distance that Pierre kept from O-Dog on that table, eh? There was like
Oh, yeah.
there was like the four guys and then Pierre all the way to the right. It was
Yeah.
hilarious to look at. Like you could just tell, and his suit was a little bit brighter than everyone's. Like
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
just funny. You could tell he was kind of the outcast of the group.
Not to mention he would just split whenever he felt like it and walk over to Bobby Mack
To break a
or-
trade,
or,
yeah.
or instead of like being attentive and listening to Duffy, he'd be checking his reflection in his phone to make
Yeah.
sure his makeup was on point.
Yeah.
It was just really something.
That guy's just a class act, and he didn't disappoint. He had some funny takes. So
Yeah.
no, we got exactly what we wanted.
All right, well, yeah. On that note, it was a very festive episode. Lots to talk about. It was a crazy week.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, unless you got anything to add, Kyle, I think that about wraps it up.
No, yeah, just a lot, like just dense content this week.
Yeah.
A lot to get through. So I hope you guys digested it okay. I'm sure like this is like the third or fourth time you're hearing analysis on these things, but we like to add a little bit of Rink Moose magic, if you will. So yeah, hopefully you got a little bit more perspective on the way things are shaping up and the outlook of the season. And we outlined some interesting storylines to check on throughout the week and throughout the couple months to go here. So yeah, it was good to get through the Trade Center stuff, and we'll be right back at you with definite fantasy news updates, our league as well as just fantasy advice in general. I think that's going to probably pick up in the next couple of episodes. As we're all buckling down, I'm sure, to start winning some weeks. So yeah, it's gonna be a good couple weeks coming up, and we're excited.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, fantasy, lots going on there. The end of Bachelor,
Oh,
lots
yeah.
going on there. Hey, I'll tell you what, even from here in Kingston, things are heating up. Queens, the varsity men's team, they've qualified for the final.
Oh, good.
Against the winner of Western and Guelph.
Wow.
In the Ontario final. So, yeah, I might even go to the final. I think that would be really something. So I might have some update on the viewers there. You know, I love my amateur hockey. So, hey, may have some updates on that front too.
Yeah, you should go. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I hear it's a hell of a barn we got here. It's the same one I play on for my intramural team, but
Wow.
of course it would be a lot more lively when the varsity team's playing, to
I'm
say
sure.
the least. So yeah, wouldn't that be something? Western versus Queens.
Oh, now that's a journalist storyline if I ever
Yeah,
heard
there
one.
you go. There you
Nice.
go.
All right, fellas.
Yeah.
I think that about wraps it up. And it was just a pleasure to do the show, even if it is in this closet. And without further ado, Nick, this is Rink Moose.
Signing off.